It's looking like the Patriots might have taken your wide receiver. Does not the wide receiver any of us thought. Now I see it in two different places. They have taken Tyquan Thornton from Baylor, who I just mentioned a few minutes ago, ran a 4.28 in the 40-yard dash. Now Albert
Wow.
Breer has it. So it's Tyquan Thornton. So they got some real speed. Now, when I watch Tyquan Thornton on tape, I think the biggest concern that I have with him is size. He's got a rail thin frame. I think he's 170 soaking wet, right? I mean, he's a really small receiver, but he can get up the field and he can absolutely fly. And you definitely do see some elements of route running that you're really going to like. So he had really good production at Baylor. He's really, really fast. He has some of that ability underneath the defense.
He's also, and again, he's thin, but he's tall. He's 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah, he is tall, but he's rail thin, and he had problems in the tape that I watched of him. He had problems getting off press coverage. He was somebody that struggled with the physical coverage, struggled with jams, struggled with corners getting up on him. But the one thing that you definitely see with him is when he pushes vertical, that speed is legitimate, and it's really difficult for teams to stay over the top of it. So when he sees off coverage, he eats up that cushion. You get corners on their horses, right? Corners are coming out of their stance and they're getting up the field. And he does have that ability to break off a slant, to stop down on a hitch route and create some underneath separation with that vertical push. Really, really fast receiver, though. The Patriots, we wanted speed on offense for a long time. 4.28 doesn't get much faster than that in the NFL draft. The one thing that I would also kind of trickling this forward, I don't know what this means necessarily for Nelson Aguilar. Obviously, only has one more year on his contract. Maybe they feel like Tyquan Thornton ideally has a year to sit there and behind Nelson Aguilar. But Tyquan Thornton to me is a field stretcher, right? Like you're not thinking about him as somebody that's going to win in any other way besides down the field and with that vertical element to his game. There's one other thing that I'll mention. I know I'm almost reluctant to mention it. He does actually block really well. For a receiver of his size, there's legitimate blocking tape of him that he's blocking guys like into the sideline and out the club, right? So he's got some things to be excited about. I mean, it's not John Mechie. I would have preferred Sky Moore personally. I think it's, again, I'm not gonna crap all over them for reaching because their board is just pretty clearly a different board than everybody else is using, right? So whatever it's it's gonna be, in terms of that. I had guys much higher on him. Sky Moore, Alec Pierce, Khalil Shakur. These are all players that I thought were going to go way higher than somebody like Tyquan Thornton, but they're taking a chance on the speed, right? They want the speed in the building, and they certainly got it here.
Also, considered, just in terms of profile, small-ish hands. He is the fastest in the draft. His 10 yards.
Oh, John, I think we lost you. Yeah. Yeah, I think we lost John. He's gonna pop in and then pop back out. But yeah, here we go. You guys wanted speed. I guess that's the positive spin I can definitely give on this. Definitely wanted speed, and you got speed. He can get up the field. He's a really, really fast receiver. Like I said, my board is a little bit different than theirs, but at this point in the draft, I'm not ready to slam them for their board being different than mine. Clearly, they're operating on a different board, and that's just life. So Tyquan Thornton to me has a lot of speed and a lot of ability to push the ball up the field. There's some tape of him that I really like underneath the defense too. He can run drag routes or underneath shallows across the field and create with the football in his hands in that respect. I'll post some clips on my Twitter here in a second of his when we log off. I think you guys are going to like what you see out of him. He can really fly. And I think the closest thing that as we get John back on here, I think the closest thing that I would say that Tyquan Thornton is to me of the skill set that they've had in the past, that's a player like that, is probably Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is a decent comp in terms of what we've seen in the Patriots offense in the past. So we'll see. I think that this is an interesting pick. I'm not jumping for joy at it because I think it's a little early for Tyquan Thornton, but Again,
So here's the one thing I like. Again, what I like is they recognize the need.
yes.
Okay. And I like that they got aggressive enough to move up and get the player. So what you have to put faith in is the team to know what they're doing. And you always want them to want something rather than to sit back and to settle or to trade back and say, whatever, I don't like any of these guys and I'll take one if I have to. So I always view that as a positive when a team moves up to get a player and they targeted this particular position, which means that they
Right.
recognize that this is a position of need. However, it's really freaking hard not to mention the track record with drafting receivers, particularly when they go off the grid, you know. And when they do, I would say Chad Jackson's the only one in the whole that they've drafted over time. When Branch being another who was rated about where they should have been drafted, and everybody else was like, "Well, you took that guy, huh? What about these other 3 or 4 guys? They seem to be better. Why didn't you take one of them?" None of those have worked out, and that's the fear. Whether it's Aaron Dobson, obviously N'Keal Harry. It just hasn't worked. They don't take a lot of swings here. Does this feel like a Belichick pick or a Groh pick? I lost you now. What the? Now you got to go. It seems like I'll hang out here for a little bit while Evan leaves and comes back. But again, that's kind of my thinking here is I like when they like a player. And obviously they liked something here and they moved up. I don't know whether or not any of the other players were clearly going to be better at this point. And Evan, are you going to pop out and back in? There he goes. But I'm just looking at the chat here. And it seems mixed. It seems mixed. It's hard for me to get really upset about fastest guy on at the combine. It's hard for me to get mad about it. Evan, go ahead.
I'm conflicted about this one because look, I came on here last night. It took Cole Strange probably a round too early for my liking. This is probably 2 rounds earlier than I thought Thornton was going to go. And last night I definitely lost it about the offensive lineman. I'm not going to lie. And at this point, I am just come to terms with the fact that their board is different than everybody else's drastically this year. They're on their own this year. They're doing their own thing. What I will say about Thornton and what I did like, my biggest concern, like I said, was play strength and size in terms of his frame, but his general route running ability wasn't terrible. Like he definitely can run routes a little bit better than I thought he would. It's early, and I'm just not. I don't have it in me for taking a guy
I've
early.
lost my will to fight.
Whatever. Like this is their board. This is their draft. We got a player that has WR next to his name, so we can relish in that. We can also relish in the fact that he ran a 4.28.
That's literally the only reason I'm celebrating it is if they were going to go so hugely off the board in one direction or another, I'm just glad they did it with the WR next to it instead of going off the board and taking, some safety,
right.
who was, the Jordan Richards 2.0.
Right.
That would have killed me.
Yeah. So the
Pickens, whoa.
Yeah, the Packers.
Yeah, there goes Pickens. Yeah, Pickens goes to
the Steelers. So Steelers. This is bad to me
because the Steelers are really good at drafting receivers.
The Steelers are amazing at this, and the Steelers prefer George Pickens over your guy.
That definitely they might have drafted Thornton if he was still there.
Maybe. Let's hope that they would have. Honestly, right? I mean, let's hope that they would have. He's fast. He gets up the field. When I watch receivers like in the Tyquan Thornton mold, I think the best compliment I can give a guy like that, you want to watch a guy that makes corners scared. Like you want to watch a guy that makes corners concerned about the speed. And Tyquan Thornton has legit play speed at 4.28. Like we're not talking about a Philip Dorsett we might be talking about a Philip Dorsett, but we're not talking about somebody that it's fake speed. Like, I think Damiere Byrd is probably like a better example, right? Because we're not talking about somebody like Damiere Byrd who just looks really good in shorts and runs really fast down the field. This is somebody with pads on college football field at Baylor, ran 4.28. You can definitely see it. I think his route breaks are a little bit segmented, like a little bit not as quick and not as fluid at the top of the route than I would like to see. But I think at the X spot, they're probably going to run him vertical. They're going to run him on horizontal stretch across the field, and he's going to be fast. And that's going to be what it is. But this is Pickens.
This is a guy most people had as a day. This is a guy most people had as a day 3 pick.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like, we talk about like consensus boards and where the like consensus probably was on.
I think I saw PFF had him like in the 190s.
Yeah, this guy moved up the board for anybody and everybody because of his 40. Like, it's as simple as that. He ran well in the 40 and he moved up the board and came into that top. Like I said earlier when we were talking about him, you don't last long in the NFL draft when you run 4.28, right? Like, you just don't. So if you run 4.28, you're going to come off the board in the top 100 in my mind. So I think he's a top 100 guy. It's a draft that everybody is doing whatever they want anyways, right? Like, it's a complete draft, pick your flavor draft. So they pick their flavor. I'm not totally out on the pick, but I don't know. I don't know. I can't explain Tyquan Thornton any more than I have. He's fast. He's really, really fast. You see the speed everywhere, whether it's on verticals, whether it's horizontally stretching the defense. He took a ball, for example, he ran a short, shallow drag route, a little crosser, and he took it 90 yards to the house, right? I mean, that's like the sort of guy that we're talking about. So, all right. I mean, here we go. There's a receiver a few years ago from Auburn. I can't remember his name. It reminds me of him. When you run sub 4.3, you just don't last. Now, this is early to me though. And I don't even care about that.
And then more goes to KC.
Yeah.
So 2 teams that are really good at drafting receivers took Pickens and Moore after you took Thornton. Could this be your AJ Brown and Metcalf scenarios? We'll see.
It's definitely scary. I mean, right now, like, it's super hard to think of Tyquan Thornton as anybody else besides Philip Dorsett. Like, that's like the guy that's standing out in my head right now when I think about the player, which is not great. Like, he's bigger than Philip Dorsett in terms of height, but in terms of weight, he's not. And I think you look at it too. The biggest concern that I would also have is I think that they ideally think that Tyquan Thornton's Brandon Cooks. Like, I think that that's kind of their hope here, is that has that Brandon Cooks level impact for them. But I don't know. It's a weird pick. It's another weird pick. What can I say?
It's a weird pick.
If the Patriots hadn't drafted a wide receiver tonight and I was going to write a preview for day 3, I would have had Tyquan Thornton in my preview on day 3.
Right.
It's that simple. But at this point, Sky Moore, Pickens, Alec Pierce from Cincinnati, Shakur. I would have much rather Khalil Shakur from Boise State. Much more polished, much more refined. This is odd to me because the Patriots are not typically the team that sits there and says, "Oh, we're going to take the guy that ran the 4.28 just because he's fast," right? Like, it's just not. That's not usually their MO. Like, they usually have a more complete evaluation of a player than, this guy was on the Baylor track team, so we're going to draft him because he ran a 4.28, right?
It's a weird one, man. It's it's pretty weird. So again, third round player in the first round, day 3 player in the second round. That's what you got. You got 2 4th round picks coming up. Anything else you want to say before we put a bow on this portion of the draft? And again, I know there's a lot of you in here hanging out, and let's spend a little more time on this pick before we go because we have a large audience. But everybody here now, I just want to tell you, we're going to pop back on in the 3rd round well before the Patriots are going to pick and do a nice little lead up to their picks there. First one is, what is it again? 121 and 127.
Right.
Will pop up somewhere. What did I say?
Their third round picks are 85 and 90.
85 and 90. So I'm sorry. I did the fourth round picks. 85 and 94. We'll pop up at around 75 and we'll take you all the way through there with that. But final thoughts here on this one before we wrap it.
I'm just really surprised that Tyquan Thornton was their guy. I really, the concern that I have with this pick, and I honestly, the only sell on this pick that I have is that he's wicked fast. The guy's 4.28, and he does have some really good tape, and he had really good production at Baylor. The concern that I have with it is it's another guy to me who's not a technician. Like, I don't watch him as a route runner and think to myself, oh, wow, this guy runs great routes. Like, this guy understands leverage, and he understands sight adjustments, and he understands all those types of things, right? And I'm not like harping on the fact that Tyquan Thornton, they took him early. Like, I don't really care about that. I'm more concerned about the player itself at this point. And I'm just not 100% sure that Thornton has the skill set to survive in the Patriots offense. I just don't know if he has the route running ability. I don't know if he has the polish. And that's what I wanted to see them do. I wanted to see them do somebody like that really had that type of polish. And that's why I really like Sky Moore so much. But look, we'll wait and see. There's enough there with Tyquan Thornton that there's enough there that I can, say, okay, well, we'll see what happens with the pick. Not the guy I would have taken, but sure. We'll see.
And are we to believe this is one of those players that all media had wrong? And in fact, he was a good bit higher. And if the Patriots didn't take him here, this is again what we don't know. Are we to believe that if the Patriots don't take him here, some other team will soon in the next few picks? He wouldn't be around in that third round. I don't know, because there are players like that everybody's wrong on.
Right.
Or is this another case of the Patriots could have waited a round or a day to take a player, in which case we're talking about asset management, which was the issue again with yesterday's pick then
Alec Pierce went to 53. So the 53. Wide receiver one was happening. I'm already.
The Patriots jumped out ahead of the wide receiver run and took a guy nobody was going to take. So again,
I already see some of the reports of Tyquan Thornton was going to go right. I already see those.
So again, I don't believe it because Bill does this a lot, and it's just what he does. As you said, he's got a totally different evaluation and a totally different board than everybody else, and he doesn't care at all where ESPN had this guy ranked.
Right. Doug Kyed, formerly Ness and now PFF, has already reported that he knows of teams that had Tyquan Thornton as their number one receiver on the board. So
if that's the case, then that and again, this is what is difficult, and it's why it's hard to judge here, is if this is the case and the Patriots were smart and jumped out ahead of teams and got somebody that was coveted at this position.
Yeah.
Great. Obviously, KC wasn't one of those teams because they wouldn't have given up that pick and taken a different receiver later. So that's not one of them for sure. They obviously had their guy, Sky Moore. Did they end up with Moore?
Kansas City, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Ranked higher. But again, it just comes down to asset management. Is if somebody if you use your first round pick to draft a third rounder and you use your second round pick to draft a fourth rounder, if somebody offered the Patriots before the trade a second and a fourth for their first and second, would they take it? Of course not. So if you're going to say no to that trade, then you shouldn't draft players who have that kind of draft grade. You should wait to draft them in those rounds. That's what asset management is. So again, it's hard to say here. And as you said, there's some reporting right now that Thornton was maybe a little bit more coveted than we realized, and was that speed that was going to knock him up into this tier of receivers. And maybe he would have gone in this kind of pool. Then it's a question of, did they pick the right guy? Historically, they haven't. We'll see whether they have in this case.